Hi there, so this video is based on some other two videos that I made, which will be linked below. So let's see, basically what we have here, we have a list of customers, some API, some local API that I'm using, and what we want to see in this video is how to actually invalidate the data in order to basically update the UI once you make a mutation using a query, like deleting something or creating something, but in this case we're gonna delete something. So this is the list of customers that we have, and then in the code what we have there, we do have the same thing with prefetch query, which I explained in the second last video, and we iterate the states, and then we have the customer page where we get the query, and then basically we print out all of the customers there. So let's see which is the problem here. First, if we try to delete this and look in the network tab, we press delete, and the delete is okay, but the UI didn't update, so I have to refresh in order to get it to update. But let's create again the same customer again, and basically because we had to refresh, that's not a good user experience. So how we fix that? Using NextJs 13.4 and React query. First, we need to have a query client in order to invalidate some queries here, like the customers, because basically the query key for getting the customers are customers, and we want to invalidate that in order to reload the customers again. But we can't do that because basically we do not have a query client, and if we create a new query client, it will not work because it will have a different reference and the storage inside it will be different. So let's see, we have the providers here, and in providers we do have the query client here, right? And we need somehow a way to get the query client. So the easiest way to do that is basically to create a context so that this can be used and anywhere in the app. So let's see, let's just create a context folder and then create a file, query client context client.tsx. we're gonna use the use client here, and for ease of use I'm gonna just copy out the code. So what we do here, we basically create a new context for the query instance context, which we name it like that, and then we create a provider where we hold the query client here basically, and then we're gonna provide that, so anything that holds in the children, and we also gonna create a hook, use query client instance, basically to get easier the query clients in order to have clean code and so on. So basically, because we do not want to call this every time, we just gonna call the use query client instance, right? And how can we use that? So in order to use that, basically we need to go to the providers. So we have the providers here, and we need to wrap this thing up in order to get our query client context, right? So in order to do that, so we basically need to get this, get a query client instance provider, which you're gonna import it. But the problem is how we can get a query client, because we can get it like this, because basically we can't access it. We need to create a new component, which we'll name it, let's say, app instance client, and let's say const app query client instance wrapper. That will be the name, and have the children, and we have the children, and then bracket node. Then we get it like this. Let's put it a bit up to the top so we do not interfere with the props. So what we're gonna do this here, basically we're gonna get the query client instance, so that there we can return the query client provider with a query client instance, right? So doing that, we basically have access to the query client here, and we're gonna use the same query client basically everywhere in our app to have the same instance. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna replace that with our wrapper in order to be able to access the context that we created to get the query client there. So we don't need that anymore. So basically we get the query client from the context which is created once, and we don't need to create it twice. And let's see that we're gonna do this, and that's looking good. And then we're gonna use the query client from here to get it out in the customer element, so that basically we can invalidate having the same query client everywhere in the app once. Basically we have a singleton of a query client, and we can invalidate the customers, and theoretically now it should work. We have some things there that we don't want, but I don't know from where I get from here, right? I'll delete that. Cool. So once we get all of this, if we're gonna click delete, let's see what happens in the network tab. Gonna click delete to see, wow, basically we get the UI updated because we delete the customer there, and after the deletion is successful, we're gonna get a new request to get the customers. We can do also optimistic updates or pessimistic ones, and so on and so on. This one is basically, I guess, pessimistic because we basically update the query client instance. I mean the query, we invalidate the queries for the customers after the deletion was successfully deleted, but we can do anything that we want in the mutation how React query does it. So yeah, you just need to, if you need to use the query client, to use it like this and so on. And you can either do some wrapping to have your own mutation, I guess, where you could get a query client, but I don't see the point. For now, I think it looks good. So yeah, this is how you do mutation, and basically you're gonna prefetch the data on the customer with the NextJs. I'm gonna get the data directly there, and after you get the data directly, you can like delete and update the UI as well, which is super nice and easy to use. The main point there was to have a way to have a single query client instance. So we did that using a context, and we provide basically the query clients everywhere in our app. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. The code will be added in the description, and along with the other videos that I talked about at the beginning of this video.